Sarah Martinez walked out of Mercy General Hospital for the last time, her nursing badge still warm in her pocket. 20 years of dedicated service, and they fired her for refusing to let a patient die. The administrator called it violating protocol, but Sarah called it being human. The autumn air bit at her cheeks as she loaded the cardboard box of her belongings into her old Toyota. Photos of smiling patients, thank you cards, and a coffee mug that read, "World's Best Nurse," rattled against each other. She slammed the trunk harder than necessary. "Budget cuts," she muttered, starting the engine. "Can't afford to keep experienced nurses, but they can afford another wing for the executives." The drive home took her through the winding mountain roads outside Denver. Sarah loved these roads, especially when she needed to think. The trees blazed orange and gold, and the setting sun painted the sky purple. She almost missed the smoke. Black smoke rose from the forest about a mile off the main road. Sarah's nursing instincts kicked in immediately. Forest fire? Car accident? Someone might need help. She pulled over and grabbed her emergency medical kit from the back seat. Years of emergency response training took over as she jogged toward the smoke, her sneakers crunching on fallen leaves. The smell hit her first. Not wood smoke, but something metallic and strange, like burning electronics mixed with sulfur. The trees opened into a small clearing, and Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. A massive creature lay in the center of a scorched circle of earth. At first, her brain refused to process what she was seeing. It was easily 30 feet long, covered in scales that shimmed between deep purple and midnight blue. Wings, actual wings, spread out at awkward angles. One of them bent wrong, clearly broken. A dragon, an actual living dragon. Sarah's medical training warred with her common sense. "Run!" her survival instinct screamed. But the creature's labored breathing, the way its massive chest heaved with each painful breath, triggered something deeper. A patient was a patient. The dragon's eye opened as she approached, gold, like molten metal, with a vertical pupil that focused on her with startling intelligence. Sarah froze, her hand halfway to her medical kit. "I know this is crazy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm a nurse, or I was. I can help." The dragon made a sound between a growl and a whimper. Dark fluid leaked from several deep gashes along its side. Not blood exactly, but something that served the same purpose. Sarah's hands moved on autopilot, pulling out gauze, antiseptic, anything that might help. "This is insane," she muttered, approaching slowly. "I'm treating a dragon. They're going to lock me up." The creature remained still as she examined the wounds. 3 parallel slashes, too clean to be from another animal. These were made by weapons. Someone or something had attacked this magnificent being. Sarah worked methodically, cleaning the wounds as best she could. The dragon's scales felt warm, almost fevered. She had no idea about dragon physiology, but infection was infection. She applied antibiotic ointment liberally, hoping it would help. The broken wing presented a bigger challenge. Sarah had set broken bones before, but never on this scale. She studied the wing structure, surprised to find it wasn't too different from a bat's wing she'd once seen in veterinary textbooks. "This is going to hurt," she warned. The dragon's eye tracked her movements. Slowly, incredibly, it nodded. Sarah braced herself and pulled. The bone shifted with a grinding sensation she felt in her teeth. The dragon roared, a sound that shook leaves from nearby trees, but it didn't move. Tears streamed down Sarah's face from the sheer volume of the sound, but she kept working. 2 hours passed in focused concentration. Sarah used every supply in her kit and improvised with branches for splints. The dragon remained patient throughout, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds that seemed almost like purring. As she tied off the last bandage, exhaustion hit her like a truck. Sarah sat back on her heels, surveying her work. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold. "You need rest," she said, then laughed at herself. "I'm giving medical advice to a dragon." The dragon's eye crinkled in what looked impossibly like amusement. It lifted its great head slightly and touched its snout gently to Sarah's shoulder. The gesture was unmistakably grateful. A sound like tearing metal filled the air. Sarah looked up to see 4 shapes descending from the darkening sky. Not helicopters or planes, something else entirely. The ships were organic-looking, like giant insects made of dark metal and pulsing lights. The dragon tensed, trying to rise despite its injuries. Sarah understood immediately. These were the attackers. "Oh no," she breathed. "No, no, no." The ships landed in a rough circle around them. Sarah's mind raced. She was an unemployed nurse with an empty medical kit, standing between an injured dragon and 4 alien ships. The smart thing would be to run. She didn't run. Instead, Sarah stood up, placing herself directly in front of the dragon. Her hands shook, but her voice came out steady. "I don't know if you understand me," she called out as ramps lowered from the ships. "But this creature is under my care. In my world, that means something." Figures emerged from the ships, humanoid in shape but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin, with skin that looked like polished obsidian. Their faces were angular, with eyes that glowed a sickly green. They carried weapons, long staffs that hummed with energy. The lead figure spoke, its voice like grinding stone. "Stand aside, primitive. The Drake belongs to the Vor Collective." The words appeared in Sarah's mind, translated somehow. Alien technology or something else, she didn't care. What mattered was they could understand her. "No," Sarah said simply. The aliens paused, clearly not expecting defiance from a single human. "The Drake is valuable," the leader continued. "Its scales can power our ships for a generation. Its blood extends life. You cannot comprehend its worth." "I comprehend that it's a living being," Sarah shot back, "and it's hurt. Where I come from, we don't harvest patience for parts." The dragon made a low sound behind her. Sarah felt heat building, like standing too close to a furnace. "You are one small human," another alien said. "We are many. Step aside or be removed." Sarah's laugh surprised everyone, including herself. "You know what? I've had a really bad day. I lost my job for saving a life, and now you want me to step aside so you can butcher this magnificent creature? I don't think so." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her nursing badge. The light from the alien ships caught on the metal, making it gleam. "This badge means I took an oath," Sarah said, "to do no harm, to protect those who can't protect themselves, to stand between death and my patients. I've kept that oath for 20 years, and I'm not breaking it now." The aliens raised their weapons. Sarah's heart hammered, but she didn't move. She thought of all the patients she'd fought for over the years. The children who'd beaten cancer, the accident victims who'd walked again, the elderly who'd passed peacefully because someone cared enough to hold their hand. If this was how she died, at least it meant something. The dragon moved faster than anything that size had a right to. Its tail swept out, catching 2 of the aliens and sending them flying. Despite its injuries, it reared up, wings spread wide. Fire erupted from its mouth, not the orange flames Sarah expected, but something white-hot and tinged with blue. The aliens scattered, but their weapons were already firing. Energy bolts sizzled through the air. Sarah threw herself to the ground as one passed inches over her head. The smell of ozone filled her nostrils. The dragon roared again, this time in pain. A bolt had struck its shoulder, leaving a smoking wound. It faltered, and Sarah knew they were both about to die. That's when she remembered the emergency flare in her car's roadside kit. "Keep them busy!" she yelled. Not sure if the dragon understood. She sprinted toward the tree line, energy bolts scorching the ground around her. Her car seemed impossibly far away. An alien appeared in front of her, weapon raised. Sarah didn't think. just reacted with the self-defense training the hospital had mandated. She ducked under the staff and drove her shoulder into what she hoped was its solar plexus. The alien wheezed and doubled over. Sarah kept running. She reached her car and yanked open the trunk. The roadside kit was there, bright orange and dusty. She grabbed the flare gun and all 3 flares, then turned back to the battle. The dragon was holding its own, but barely. Its fire had driven the aliens back, but it was clearly exhausted. Dark fluid ran from multiple wounds. Sarah loaded the flare gun with shaking hands. She'd never shot at anything living before, but these things were trying to kill her patient. She aimed at the nearest alien ship and pulled the trigger. The flare streaked across the clearing and struck the ship's underbelly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flare's magnesium core reacted with something in the ship's hull. The explosion knocked Sarah off her feet. The damaged ship listed to one side, smoke pouring from a growing hole in its hull. The aliens turned their attention from the dragon to this new threat. Sarah loaded another flare. "That's right," she yelled. "Come and get me!" She fired again, this time at a cluster of aliens. They scattered, but one wasn't fast enough. The flare struck its weapon, which exploded in a shower of green sparks. The alien dropped, clutching its arm. The dragon took advantage of the distraction. It lunged forward, jaws closing around another alien. There was a crunch that made Sarah's stomach turn, but she couldn't afford squeamishness now. 2 aliens remained, plus whatever crew was still in the ships. Sarah loaded her last flare. She had to make it count. The leader raised its weapon, aiming directly at her. Time seemed to slow. Sarah could see its finger tightening on what passed for a trigger. She dove to the side just as the energy bolt seared past. The dragon's tail caught the leader in the chest, sending it tumbling. Sarah fired her last flare at the second undamaged ship. This time she got lucky. The flare went straight into an open hatch. The explosion was smaller but came from inside the ship. Smoke billowed out, and Sarah heard alien voices screaming. The last standing alien looked between Sarah, the dragon, and its damaged ships. It made a chittering sound that might have been a curse and retreated to the nearest functional vessel. Within moments, the ships were lifting off, leaving their dead behind. Sarah stood in the sudden silence, flare gun still raised. Her whole body shook with adrenaline. The clearing looked like a war zone, scorched earth, alien bodies, and in the center, one very battered dragon. "We did it," she said, then laughed hysterically. "We actually did it." The dragon lowered its great head until it was eye level with her. This close, she could see intelligence in those golden eyes, far beyond any animal. It made a soft rumbling sound and gently nudged her with its snout. "You're welcome," Sarah said, understanding the gesture. "But you're the one who did most of the fighting. I just caused a distraction." She looked at the dragon's new wounds. Her medical supplies were exhausted, but she had to do something. Then she remembered her apartment was only 20 minutes away. She had a fully stocked first aid closet there, accumulated over years of bringing work home with her. "Can you fly?" she asked, then felt foolish. The wing she'd splinted was clearly not flight-ready. "Never mind. We need to get you somewhere safe. Those things might come back with reinforcements." The dragon tilted its head, seeming to consider. Then it did something that made Sarah's jaw drop. It began to shrink. The transformation was smooth, like watching a video in reverse. 30 feet became 20, then 10, then 6. When it finished, the dragon was the size of a large horse. Its wounds had shrunk proportionally, which would make them easier to treat. "You can shape-shift," Sarah breathed. "Of course you can. Why not? This day can't get any weirder." She was wrong about that. Sarah's apartment complex had seen better days, but the sight of it had never been more welcome. The dragon, now horse-sized, followed her up the external staircase to her second-floor unit. Several neighbors peered through curtains, but Sarah was too exhausted to care what they thought. "Home sweet home," she said, unlocking the door. "It's not much, but it's safe." The dragon squeezed through the doorway, careful not to bump its injured wing. Sarah's living room suddenly felt very small. The creature settled on her area rug with surprising grace, tucking its tail around itself like a cat. Sarah went straight to her bathroom closet, pulling out boxes of medical supplies, sutures, antibiotics, pain medication, things she'd collected over the years, always preparing for emergencies that never came. Until now. "I need to clean those new wounds," she said, returning with an armload of supplies. "This might sting." The dragon extended its injured foreleg without hesitation. Up close, in proper light, Sarah could see the scales more clearly. Each one was perfect, like a jeweled masterpiece. They shifted color as the dragon breathed, purple to blue to hints of silver. As she worked, Sarah found herself talking. Maybe it was the stress, or maybe it was the strange comfort of having someone who couldn't judge her human problems. 20 years, she said, cleaning a particularly nasty burn. 20 years of 12-hour shifts, double weekends, missed holidays, and they threw me away like garbage because I wouldn't let them pull the plug on a 7-year-old. The dragon made a low thrumming sound, clearly listening. She was in a coma, but I could see the brain activity. I knew she was still in there. The insurance company said further treatment wasn't cost-effective. Can you believe that? A child's life measured in dollars and cents. Sarah's hands stayed steady, despite the tears running down her face. She'd held them back all day, but now they flowed freely. I refused to stop her life support, held my ground for 3 days, and you know what? She woke up. That little girl opened her eyes and asked for her mommy, but did that matter? No, I'd violated protocol, challenged administration, so they fired me. The dragon shifted slightly, and Sarah felt warm breath on her shoulder. A gentle comfort from a creature out of legend. "I'm sorry," she laughed, wiping her eyes. "Here you are, literally fighting for your life against alien hunters, and I'm complaining about job drama." The dragon made a sound she was beginning to recognize as disagreement. It touched its snout to the box of thank you cards visible in her living room, then back to her. The message was clear. Her work mattered. Sarah finished treating the wounds and sat back. The dragon looked much better, though still far from healed. She wondered about its metabolism, its healing rate. 1,000 medical questions she had no way to answer. "You need food," she decided. "And rest. What do dragons eat?" The creature tilted its head, then carefully stood and walked to her kitchen. It sniffed at various items, finally stopping at her freezer. One claw tapped the door. "Frozen food!" Sarah opened the freezer, revealing packages of chicken, beef, and fish. "Protein! That makes sense." She defrosted everything she had, watching in fascination as the dragon ate with surprising delicacy. It consumed about 30 pounds of meat without slowing down. "I'll need to go shopping," Sarah said dryly. "My grocery budget just exploded." Night had fully fallen. Sarah checked her phone. No messages. No one had noticed she hadn't come home on time. The loneliness of that realization hit harder than expected. "I should call the authorities," she said, looking at the dragon. "The government. Someone. This is too big for just me." The dragon's reaction was immediate and negative. It shook its great head, eyes wide with what looked like fear. "Bad idea?" Sarah considered. "Yeah. You're probably right. They'd cage you up, experiment on you, turn you into a lab rat, or worse, hand you over to those aliens to avoid an interplanetary incident." She made a decision that would have seemed insane that morning. "You can stay here. We'll figure this out together." The dragon settled back on the rug, a living impossibility making itself at home in her tiny apartment. Sarah grabbed a blanket and pillow, planning to sleep on the couch to keep watch. But exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She was asleep within minutes. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through her windows and the smell of coffee. which was impossible because she lived alone and had a dragon for a house guest. She sat up, confused, to find the dragon gone. In its place stood a woman. The woman was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin that held a faint purple tint in the morning light. Her hair was black with blue undertones, falling to her waist. Her eyes were still gold, still vertical pupiled, still unmistakably the dragon's eyes. "Good morning," the woman said, her voice melodic, but with an underlying rumble. "I made coffee. I hope you don't mind." Sarah stared, mouth open. The woman wore one of Sarah's robes, which was comically short on her tall frame. "You can turn into a human," Sarah managed. "Not exactly human," the woman corrected, "but close enough to pass, usually. My name is Siltharian, though that's a rough translation. You can call me Sil." "Sil," Sarah repeated numbly. "Right, of course. Why not?" Sil handed her a mug of coffee, prepared exactly how Sarah liked it. "You seem to need it. You've had a difficult few days?" The absurdity of the understatement made Sarah laugh. "That's one way to put it." She took a sip of coffee, grounding herself in the familiar ritual. "So, you're an alien dragon who can shape-shift. Those other aliens are hunting you, and now you're in my apartment making coffee." "That's an accurate summary," Sil agreed, sitting gracefully on the couch. "Though technically I'm not alien to Earth. My people have been here longer than humans." Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. "What?" "Dragons are native to Earth," Sil explained. "We've lived here for millions of years, though we learned to hide when humans developed technology. The Vor Collective, those hunters, they're the aliens. They've been systematically hunting dragons across the galaxy for centuries." "Why?" Sarah asked, remembering what the aliens had said. "They mentioned your scales and blood." Sil's expression darkened. "Dragon scales can store and channel massive amounts of energy. Our blood has regenerative properties that can extend most species' lifespans by centuries. To them, we're not sentient beings. We're resources to be harvested." The medical implications made Sarah's mind race. "Regenerative properties? Like healing factor?" "Among other things," Sil said carefully. "But before you ask, it doesn't work the way you're thinking. Dragon blood is toxic to most other species unless specifically prepared, and the preparation destroys most of its properties. The Vor have technology to process it, but even they can only use it in small doses." "I wasn't thinking of using it," Sarah said quickly. "I was just—" "The scientist in me was curious." Sil smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp to be human. "You saved my life without knowing anything about me, without expecting anything in return. Do you know how rare that is in the galaxy?" "It's what anyone would do," Sarah protested. "No," Sil said firmly. "It's not. I've been to 100 worlds, seen 1,000 species. Most would have run. The brave ones might have called for help. But standing between me and a Vor hunting party, that was extraordinary." Sarah felt her cheeks heat. "I was terrified." "But you stood anyway." Sil leaned forward. "Why?" Sarah thought about it. Really thought about it. "Because it was right. Because you were hurt, and they wanted to hurt you more. Because I've spent my whole career fighting death, and I wasn't going to stop just because I got fired." "You have a warrior's heart in a healer's body," Sil said softly. "It's a powerful combination." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah's practical nature reasserted itself. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Those Vor aliens know where you are. They'll come back." "Yes," Sil agreed. "With more ships and better weapons. They don't like losing prey, especially not to a single human with a flare gun." She grinned at the memory. "That was inspired, by the way." "Thanks. But we can't fight off a bigger force. We need a plan." Sil stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. "I was traveling to a gathering place, a sanctuary where others of my kind hide. It's protected, shielded from Vor technology. If I can reach it, I'll be safe." "Where is it?" "Northern Canada, The Yukon Territory. About 2,000 miles from here. Sarah calculated quickly. That's a 3-day drive minimum. Can you fly once your wing heals? Not for at least a week, even with my accelerated healing, and flying would make me visible to their scanners. Then we drive, Sarah decided. I've got vacation time saved up. Well, had vacation time. Either way, I'm unemployed now, so my schedule's free. Syl turned from the window, surprise clear on her face. You'd do that? Drive 2,000 miles with a dragon? I've done crazier things, Sarah said, then reconsidered. Actually, no, I haven't. This is definitely the craziest, but I'm not letting those alien jerks catch you, not on my watch. The Vor won't give up easily. They'll track us, attack us. It will be dangerous. Sarah finished her coffee and stood. Then we'd better get moving. How long do you think we have? They'll need to repair their ships and call for reinforcements. Maybe 48 hours. Then we leave tonight, Sarah said. I'll stock up on supplies today. Food, medical equipment, camping gear. Can you maintain human form for extended periods? Yes, though it takes energy. I'll need to eat more. I'll buy out the meat section, Sarah promised. What about identification? If we get pulled over? Syl smiled and pulled a wallet from the robe pocket. She handed Sarah a driver's license with her picture and the name Sylvia Drake. Sarah examined it. It looked completely authentic. How? Dragons have been hiding among humans for centuries. We have our ways. Syl's expression grew serious. Sarah, I need you to understand something. If we do this, the Vor won't just target me. They'll consider you an enemy. They don't forgive, and they don't forget. Good, Sarah said fiercely, because neither do I. They want to hurt my patient? They want to harvest you like some kind of resource? Then they've made an enemy of the wrong nurse. Syl stared at her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She bowed deeply, formally, like something out of an ancient ceremony. I owe you a life debt, she said solemnly. Among my people, this is sacred. Until the debt is repaid, your enemies are my enemies. Your safety is my priority. You don't owe me anything, Sarah protested. I helped because it was right, which is exactly why the debt exists. Syl straightened. You acted without thought of reward. That kind of honor must be honored in return. Sarah felt the weight of the moment, the sense that she'd stepped into something much larger than herself. Yesterday, she'd been a fired nurse with no prospects. Today, she was planning a cross-country escape with a shape-shifting dragon, running from alien hunters. Well then, she said, pushing down her fear, I guess we'd better make sure we both survive this road trip. Syl grinned, and for a moment Sarah saw the dragon's fierce joy in that human face. I haven't had a proper adventure in decades. This should be interesting. Sarah made a list of everything they'd need. Food, water, medical supplies, weapons if she could find them. Her savings would take a hit, but what was money compared to a life? I'll go shopping, she said. You should rest. Keep healing. Can you sense if the Vor get close? Within a few miles, yes. I'll know if they approach. Sarah grabbed her keys and purse, then paused at the door. Syl, thank you for trusting me, for telling me the truth. Thank you for not running when you saw what I really was, Syl replied softly. The shopping trip was surreal. Sarah loaded cart after cart with supplies while her mind struggled to process the last 24 hours. Dragons were real. Aliens were real and hostile. She was harboring a fugitive from an intergalactic hunt. She bought enough meat to feed a small army, protein bars, camping equipment, first aid supplies, and after some hesitation, a hunting rifle and ammunition. She'd never fired a gun before, but the flare gun had proven that sometimes pacifism wasn't enough. The cashier raised an eyebrow at her purchases. Planning for the apocalypse? Something like that, Sarah muttered. She made 3 trips to load everything into her car. Her credit card groaned under the strain, but she'd worry about bills if she survived the week. Back at the apartment, she found Syl in dragon form again, carefully exercising her injured wing. The movement was still limited, but definitely improved from yesterday. "How's it feeling?" Sarah asked, setting down bags of supplies. Syl shifted back to human form. "Better. Your treatment was excellent. I've had worse injuries take weeks to heal this much." They spent the afternoon preparing. Sarah packed the car with strategic precision, making sure medical supplies were easily accessible. Syl helped, her strength making light work of heavy coolers. As evening approached, Sarah stood in her apartment one last time. 20 years of life here, and she was leaving it all behind on a moment's notice. For a dragon, the absurdity made her laugh. "Second thoughts?" Syl asked gently. "No," Sarah said firmly. "Just acknowledging how weird my life has become." She locked the door and headed down to the car. Syl followed, back in her human guise, wearing clothes Sarah had bought during the shopping trip. Jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that somehow made her look even less human despite being typical attire. They pulled out of the parking lot just as the sun set behind the mountains. Sarah took one last look in the rearview mirror at her old life, then focused on the road ahead. "North to Canada," she said, "with a dragon-riding shotgun. If someone had told me this yesterday, I'd have checked them for head trauma." "Life has a way of surprising us," Syl agreed. She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I haven't trusted anyone in a very long time. Dragons learn early that trust leads to betrayal, but you're different." "I'm just a nurse," Sarah said. "Or was." "No," Syl said firmly. "You're a guardian, a protector. That's something much rarer and more valuable than any job title." They drove through the night, taking turns at the wheel. Syl, it turned out, was an excellent driver despite her claim of not spending much time in human form. Sarah dozed fitfully in the passenger seat, waking occasionally to check their surroundings. It was nearly dawn when Syl suddenly tensed. "They're here," Sarah was instantly alert. "The Vor? Where?" "Above us. 2 ships running silent. They're scanning for my energy signature." Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. They were on a lonely stretch of highway, no other cars in sight. "What do we do?" "Keep driving normally," Syl instructed. "My human form masks most of my signature. They're not sure it's me yet." The next 5 minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. She maintained steady speed, fighting the urge to floor it. Running would only confirm their presence. Finally, Syl relaxed slightly. "They're moving on, but this was just a search pattern. They'll be back." "How many ships do you think they'll send?" "For a lone dragon? Usually 5 or 6. But after what you did..." Syl smiled grimly. "They'll want to make an example. I'd expect double that. 12 alien ships. Wonderful." Sarah took the next exit, heading for a truck stop. "We need to be smarter about this. Driving straight through is too predictable." They pulled into the busy truck stop, blending in with dozens of other travelers. Sarah studied the map while Syl kept watch. "What if we don't go directly?" Sarah suggested. "Take back roads, avoid major highways. It'll take longer but be harder to track." "Clever," Syl approved. "But we'll need to move fast when we can. My presence endangers everyone around us. The Vor won't hesitate to eliminate witnesses." The weight of that settled on Sarah's shoulders. She was risking not just her own life, but potentially others. Yet looking at Syl, seeing the mixture of strength and vulnerability in those golden eyes, she knew she'd made the right choice. "Then we'd better stay away from populated areas," Sarah decided. "I know some old logging roads through the forests. Rough going, but isolated." "Your car can handle that?" Sarah patted the dashboard of her sturdy Toyota. "This old girl has never let me down. She'll get us there." They loaded up on gas and more supplies, then headed back out. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Despite everything, Sarah felt a surge of hope. They were 2 days from safety. They could make it. She should have known it wouldn't be that easy. The logging road was barely more than a dirt track, but Sarah's Toyota handled it like a champion. They'd been driving for 18 hours, switching off to rest, pushing north through wilderness that grew denser with every mile. "There," Sil pointed to a small clearing beside a stream. "We should rest. You're exhausted." Sarah wanted to argue, but her eyes were burning with fatigue. She pulled over and cut the engine. The silence of the forest was profound after hours of driving. They set up a basic camp, just sleeping bags and a small fire. Sil insisted on taking first watch despite her injuries. Sarah was too tired to argue. She fell asleep to the sound of the stream and Sil's quiet humming, something that sounded like a lullaby from another world. She woke to Sil shaking her shoulder urgently. The fire was out, and the forest was dark under heavy clouds. "Ships," Sil whispered. "6 of them, spread in a search pattern. They'll be here in minutes." Sarah's military-donated emergency training kicked in. She rolled up the sleeping bags while Sil erased signs of their camp. They were back in the car in under 90 seconds. "Don't start the engine yet," Sil instructed. "Sound carries in these mountains." They sat in tense silence as lights appeared through the trees. The alien ships moved slowly, methodically, scanning everything. One passed directly overhead, so close Sarah could see the strange symbols etched on its hull. "Now," Sil breathed when the ships had moved past. "Go, but keep the lights off." Sarah started the engine and crept forward, navigating by moonlight and memory. Every snap of a twig under the tires sounded like a gunshot. They made it a mile before Sil told her it was safe to use the headlights. "That was too close," Sarah said, her hands shaking on the wheel. "How did they find us?" "They're tracking something," Sil said, frowning. "But not me. I'm fully masked in this form." Her eyes widened. "The car. They're tracking your car." "How? I haven't—" "Oh." Sarah's stomach dropped. "My phone, GPS, OnStar. This car is full of trackable technology." "We need to ditch it," Sil said. "Fast." But they were miles from anywhere, in the middle of wilderness. Sarah's mind raced. "There's an old ranger station about 10 miles ahead. Sometimes they leave vehicles there." "That's theft," Sil pointed out. "Add it to the list," Sarah said grimly, "right after harboring an alien fugitive and assaulting a vor hunting party." They drove fast now, abandoning stealth for speed. The ranger station appeared just as the first light of dawn touched the sky. An old pickup truck sat beside the building, keys hopefully hidden somewhere nearby. Sarah found them in a magnetic box under the rear bumper, standard procedure for Forest Service vehicles. She left an IOU with her contact information, though she doubted she'd live to honor it. They transferred their supplies quickly. Sarah's heart broke a little, leaving her faithful Toyota behind, but survival trumped sentiment. The pickup was older, louder, but it started on the first try. They rumbled back onto the logging roads just as Sil tensed again. "They found your car," she reported. "They know we switched vehicles, but it'll take them time to figure out which one." The next hours blurred together. Dirt roads, river crossings, dense forest that scraped the truck's sides. Sarah's GPS was useless here, but she had a good sense of direction, and Sil seemed to know exactly where they were going. "Tell me about the sanctuary," Sarah said, needing distraction from the constant fear. "It's ancient," Sil said, "built before humans discovered agriculture. My people created it as a refuge, a place where dragons could be themselves without fear. Over the centuries, it's evolved. Now it's hidden by technology and magic combined, invisible to any scanning device." "Magic?" Sarah couldn't hide her skepticism. "What you call magic is just science you don't understand yet," Sil said gently. Dragons manipulate energy at a quantum level. To you, it looks like magic. To us, it's as natural as breathing. Like you're shape-shifting? Exactly. Every atom in my body exists in multiple states simultaneously. I just choose which state to collapse into reality. Sarah's scientific mind reeled at the implications. That's impossible according to physics. Human physics, Syl corrected. You've barely scratched the surface of how reality actually works. They stopped for gas at a tiny station that looked abandoned. The attendant, an old man with keen eyes, filled their tank without comment. But as Sarah paid, he leaned in close. "Strange lights in the sky last night," he said quietly. "Folks are spooked. You two heading somewhere safe?" Sarah met his eyes. Something in them told her he knew more than he was saying. "We're trying to." He nodded and handed her a map, hand-drawn on old paper. "Old trapper routes. Faster than the logging roads if your truck can handle it. Stay off the main paths. Whatever's hunting, it's using the obvious routes." Sarah stared at him. "How did you—" "My grandfather used to tell stories," the old man said, "about the first people, the ones who could change shape. About how they protected this land long before we came. I never believed him until last night when I saw something flying that wasn't quite bird, wasn't quite anything else." He looked at Syl, who had stayed in the truck. "You tell your friend that some of us remember the old promises. We stand with the Guardians." Sarah drove away in stunned silence. After a mile, she asked, "What did he mean? Old promises?" "Dragons protected early humans," Syl said softly. "Taught them fire, language, basic medicine. When we went into hiding, we promised to return if humanity ever truly needed us. Some families kept the stories alive. And they just believe? After all this time?" "Humans have a gift for faith," Syl said. "It's one of your species' greatest strengths." The trapper routes were brutal. Barely more than suggestions of paths through the wilderness. But they cut hours off their journey. By afternoon, they were within 100 miles of the Canadian border. That's when everything went wrong. The attack came without warning. Energy bolts rained from the sky, turning trees into torches. Sarah yanked the wheel hard left, nearly flipping the truck. They slid sideways into a ditch as more bolts seared the air where they'd been. "Out!" Syl yelled. "Into the forest!" They ran, abandoning everything but the medical kit Sarah refused to leave. Behind them, the truck exploded in a ball of flame. The heat singed Sarah's back even 50 yards away. 12 ships descended in perfect formation. 4 soldiers poured out, moving with military precision. Sarah and Syl ran deeper into the forest, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "It's over," Sarah gasped, lungs burning. "We can't outrun them." "No," Syl said. "But I'm done running." She began to change. Not the smooth shift Sarah had seen before, but something rawer, more primal. She grew and grew, scales rippling with colors that hurt to look at. When the transformation finished, Syl stood at her full size, wounds healed, power radiating from every scale. "They want a dragon!" she roared. "They've got one!" Fire erupted from her jaws. But this wasn't the blue-white flame from before. This was something else. A beam of pure plasma that carved through a Vor ship like butter. The vessel crashed, taking down trees in its death spiral. The Vor scattered, but their weapons were already firing. Energy bolts struck Syl from multiple angles. She roared in pain, but kept fighting. Tail and claws devastating anything in reach. Sarah watched in horror as more ships arrived. 20 now, then 30. Even a dragon had limits. That's when she remembered the old man's words. "Some of us remember." She pulled out the flare gun she'd kept, loaded her last flare, and fired it straight up. The red star burst high above the forest canopy. A signal, a call for help. Nothing happened. The Vor pressed their advantage. Syl was weakening, her fire faltering. Sarah grabbed a fallen branch, ready to charge into hopeless battle rather than watch her friend die. Then she heard it. Engines, helicopters, jets. The sky filled with human aircraft, military, civilian, even crop dusters. They came from every direction, converging on the battle. Machine guns rattled, missiles streaked through the air. The Vor, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. "This is Colonel Mitchell, Canadian Air Force," a voice boomed from speakers. "You are in violation of Earth airspace. Cease hostilities immediately or face the combined might of human military forces." The Vor leader appeared on multiple screens, its ugly face contorted with rage. "You dare interfere? We are the Vor Collective. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." "And you've never conquered Earth," Mitchell replied coldly. "This dragon is under our protection. Leave, now, or we'll show you why humans are the apex predators of this world." Sarah watched in amazement as more forces arrived. American fighters from the south, ground forces setting up anti-aircraft weapons. Even civilian hunting rifles cracked from the forest as locals joined the fight. The Vor attacked, of course. They were too arrogant to retreat. It was their biggest mistake. Human weapons might have been primitive by galactic standards, but they were brutally effective. Missiles found weak spots in alien shields. Machine gun fire overwhelmed defensive systems. When 3 Vor ships tried to flee, fighter jets pursued, bringing them down with ruthless efficiency. Syl fought alongside the humans, her fire complementing their weapons. Sarah saw the beauty in it, dragon and human, magic and technology, working in perfect harmony. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, not a single Vor ship remained airborne. Some had crashed, others had been vaporized. The few survivors were quickly rounded up by ground forces. Sarah ran to where Syl had collapsed, shifting back to her human form. She was badly hurt, burns and energy wounds covering her body. Sarah worked frantically, applying everything she knew about trauma care. "Don't you dare die," she ordered. "Not after all this." Military medics joined her, following her lead without question. Together they stabilized Syl, though it was touch and go for several terrifying minutes. Colonel Mitchell approached as they loaded Syl onto a medical helicopter. He was younger than his voice suggested, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ma'am," he said to Sarah, "we've been monitoring this situation since yesterday. Satellite footage caught your initial encounter. Have to say, taking on an alien hunting party with a flare gun was the bravest damn thing I've ever seen." "How did you mobilize so fast?" Sarah asked. Mitchell smiled. "We didn't. The old-timers did. That flare was seen by every hunter, trapper, and bush pilot in 3 provinces. They started calling it in, said the Guardians needed help. My superiors thought it was nonsense until radar picked up 30 alien craft violating our airspace." He looked at Syl, unconscious but breathing steadily. "Is it true? What the elders say about dragons protecting humanity?" "Yes," Sarah said simply, "and now we're protecting them." The flight to the sanctuary was surreal. Military escort for a medical helicopter carrying a dragon. Sarah held Syl's hand the whole way, monitoring her vitals. They flew north, further north than Sarah had ever been. The landscape below turned to tundra and ice. Just when she thought they'd run out of continent, Syl stirred. "There," she whispered, pointing weakly. Through the aurora. Sarah looked where she pointed and gasped. The northern lights danced across the sky, but there was something else, a shimmer, like heat waves in winter. The helicopter flew straight toward it. Reality rippled. One moment they were over Arctic wasteland, the next they were descending into a hidden valley. Green grass, impossible warmth, and structures that looked both ancient and advanced. Dragons, dozens of them, in every color imaginable. They lined the landing field, watching with those intelligent eyes Sarah had come to know so well. As the helicopter touched down, an elderly human woman approached. She wore robes that seemed to shift between fabric and scales. "Welcome to the sanctuary," she said. "I'm Dr. Chen, Chief Medical Officer. We've been expecting you." They transferred Syl to a medical facility that made human hospitals look primitive. Dragon healers worked alongside human doctors and technology Sarah couldn't begin to understand. "She'll recover," Dr. Chen assured Sarah after the initial treatment. "Dragons are remarkably resilient, and you did excellent field care." Sarah sagged with relief. The adrenaline that had kept her going for 3 days finally crashed. She barely made it to a chair before her legs gave out. "What happens now?" she asked. Colonel Mitchell, who had accompanied them, answered. "The War survivors are in custody. Their confession about systematically hunting sapient beings has been broadcast to every government on Earth. The UN Security Council is convening an emergency session. Earth just declared war on the Vor Collective," Dr. Chen added. "Or rather, recognized that they declared war on us first by hunting our dragons." "Our dragons?" Sarah repeated. "Dragons have been part of Earth for millions of years," Chen explained. "That makes them ours to protect, and anyone who hurts them answers to all of humanity." Sarah spent the next week at the sanctuary, while Syl recovered. She learned that hundreds of dragons lived there, along with humans who knew the secret. Families like the gas station attendants who had kept faith for generations. "We always hoped this day would come," one elder told her, "when dragons and humans would stand together openly again." Syl healed quickly with proper care. On the 7th day, she found Sarah sitting by a window watching young dragons play in the afternoon sun. "You're troubled," Syl observed, sitting beside her. "I killed people," Sarah said quietly. "Those Vor. I know they were trying to kill us, but I took an oath to do no harm." "You took an oath to protect life," Syl corrected gently. "Sometimes protecting life means fighting those who would destroy it. Those Vor would have harvested hundreds of dragons, ended countless lives for profit. You stopped them. It doesn't feel like healing, doesn't it?" Syl gestured to the playing dragons. "Those children are alive because you stood between them and extinction. Every dragon here owes you a debt. You didn't just save me, you saved our entire species' future on Earth." Sarah watched a small golden dragon tumble through the air, squealing with joy. "What happens when the Vor send a fleet?" "Then they face humanity aroused," Syl said firmly. "Your species has something the Vor can't understand, the willingness to protect others even at your own cost. It's why dragons chose to ally with humans long ago. It's why we believe in you now." Colonel Mitchell appeared in the doorway. "Ladies, the Security Council is ready for your testimony." They walked to the communication center together. Screens showed world leaders gathered in New York, all waiting to hear from the nurse who'd started an interstellar war with a flare gun. Sarah thought about her old life, the hospital, the thankless hours, the bureaucracy that valued money over lives. That world seemed very far away now. "Ms. Martinez," the Secretary General said, "the world owes you a debt. You've revealed a threat to our planet and our allies. What do you recommend we do?" Sarah looked at Syl, then at the dragons visible through the windows. She thought of the Vor's arrogance, their certainty that humans were primitives to be ignored. "We show them they picked the wrong planet," she said. "Earth stands with the dragons, and if the Vor want to fight, they'll learn what humanity is capable of when we protect our own." The vote was unanimous. Earth's first interstellar alliance was formed that day, not with some distant alien civilization, but with the dragons who had shared the planet all along. Later, as Sarah and Syl watched the sunset from the sanctuary's highest tower, Syl asked, "Do you regret it? Your old life is gone. You can never go back to being just a nurse." Sarah thought about it. Her apartment, her job, her ordinary existence, all exchanged for this extraordinary new reality. "I spent 20 years healing one person at a time," she said. Now I'm part of something that could heal the relationship between two species. How could I regret that? The war will come, Syl warned. This war has just begun. Then we'll be ready, Sarah said. Dragons and humans together. They want to see what Earth is made of? We'll show them. In the distance, dragons took flight in the setting sun, their scales catching the light like living jewels. Human aircraft flew alongside them in perfect formation. It was a sight that would have been impossible just a week ago. Sarah Martinez, unemployed nurse, had become Sarah Martinez, bridge between worlds. She'd lost a job but gained a purpose. And as she watched the dragons fly, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. The Vor thought humans were primitives, beneath notice. They were about to learn why Earth's dragons had chosen humanity as allies, and why, in all the galaxy, humans were the species you didn't want to anger. The war for Earth's dragons had begun, and humanity was ready.